Aaron Barlow Drew to open number 1, and Brandon Beach will close number 1. Okay.
So I'm grateful to be here tonight. Thank you to
Would
the
you speak
Cherokee
right into
Republican
the
Women.
Can you hear,
Yeah,
can
should
you
we do
hear
a
in the
sound check
back?
if folks hear?
No.
Right over it.
Just a little bit louder.
Okay. This might be, let's try a sound check before we get going on this. I don't want to have a different mic than the other guy.
You can't hear?
No.
Oh, great.
Bit
Can you
louder
try?
than that?
It might be.
Okay. That's going to be.
Try that.
How's it? Is that any better for folks? Yes. Okay, great. So maybe that explains the last debate too. Okay. Okay, so I'm glad to be here tonight, and thank you to the Cherokee Republican Women for putting this session on. I'm just a concerned citizen running for a state senator to take our district back for conservatives. We elected politicians at the state and national level on the promise that they would reduce the size of government, but as soon as they got into office, they did the exact opposite. Our state senator, Brandon Beach, has been the sponsor, architect, and in some cases deciding vote for the $1 billion gas tax in a year when we had a multi-billion-dollar surplus. As a concerned citizen, my first reaction was, we had a surplus. We didn't need to tax us more to do these projects. $6 billion for the T-Splost. We voted that down in Cherokee by 82 to 18%. Do you know how many times our county agrees on something by a vote of 80%? That is incredible. Local media commented at the time that Senator Beach spent more time campaigning for the T-Splost $6 billion tax than for his own Senate campaign against Chip Rogers. $8 billion for MARTA. Senator Beach has been the architect and primary author of an $8 billion spending bill for MARTA, won't improve transit, has a lack of controls, transparency, and accountability on how the money will get used, and goes primarily to benefit his financial backers in the Georgia 400 corridor and in his financial filings with the government authorities who's been contributing to his campaigns. In short, when you add up these bills, Brandon Beach is too liberal for the District of Cherokee and Norfolk counties. In contrast, I've signed the tax pledge with Americans for Tax Reform to not increase tax. Georgia increases our spending $1 billion each year in the legislature, like clockwork. It's time for the legislature to live like private citizens have to live. We have to live within a budget. When we run short on money, we don't get to go to our neighbor to rob them. Instead, the state does that to us. We need to stop that sort of behavior. When our legislators compliment themselves on balancing the budget, they're referring to the constitutional amendment that requires a balanced budget. How was that, 2 minutes?
We gave you extra.
I can't even, I think maybe you were counting the time at the beginning, and we were losing time on the microphone because we had this well timed. So I'll close by saying between the $1 billion that we're spending every year and our politicians claiming credit for it, even though they're required to balance the budget, and they increase our spending $1 billion every year by spending and taxing more to do it, but that's been their method and their operation for me. We need to stop that. We need to cut regulation on small business to reduce licensing. We need to stand up for religious freedom, and then we need to cut welfare spending in this state and repurpose that into tax credits.
Stop.
Well, good afternoon and good evening, and I want to thank the Cherokee Women Republican for putting this on, this forum. Pat, thank you. Diane Ruck, thank you. Linda, thank you for moderating. And I want to introduce my wife, Chantel, and my daughter, Courtney, and my son, Hunter, up in the balcony. Thank you all for your support. When I was walking door to door the other day, I had someone ask me, why do you want to run for state senate? And my answer is the same today as it was in 1999 when I ran for city council and I won. I want to make our community better than it was when I moved here for the next generation or for our kids. It takes elected leadership, but more importantly, it takes citizens like yourself to make that happen. Many of you know Chantel and I moved here 24 years ago from Louisiana. And when I finished business school, I wanted to go back to New Orleans, but I couldn't. The elected officials didn't take care of the lottery proceeds and invest it back in transportation. They invested it in pork barrel projects, and consequently, we had the worst education, the highest crime rate, and crumbling infrastructure. And I remember vividly when I was a junior at LSU, Shell Oil Company leaving and moving to Houston, thousands of jobs. I couldn't find a job in Louisiana. So we had to make a decision between Dallas and Atlanta. We chose Atlanta. Best decision we've made in our 32 years of marriage, besides having 2 children. That's when I decided to get involved in this community. First serving on the bond referendum in 1995, and then also Planning Commission, then City Council, then GDOT, and now 4 years as your state senator. I don't want my kids not to have the opportunities that we have here and have the opportunities that I was not afforded in New Orleans. My daughter, Courtney, who's here with me tonight, went to law school in South Carolina, and I want to tell you, if she would have come to me and said, Dad, I want to stay in South Carolina, or I want to move to another state, I would have supported her. But if she said, Dad, I want to come back home, and I can't because there's no economic opportunities, no jobs, shame on me. So with that, I would just say, I only have a couple more seconds. I would just say my real job is economic development. Schools, that's the foundation for our success. If we have good schools, we'll have low crime rate, good quality of life, good parks and recreation. And I would just pledge to you as your state senator, if I'm afforded another 2 years at your seat, I will commit myself to continuing to make sure to make District 21 the best it can be. Thank you.
All right, great. Earlier, I asked the state rep candidates about legalizing gambling in the state of Georgia other than the lottery that we already have, such as parimutuel betting and casino gambling. What is your stand on that? Why or why not? And what do you think the money should go for? I'm not sure.
She asked you to have
Okay.
Okay. I did not support casino gaming, and I did not introduce a bill for casino gaming. I did introduce a bill for parimutuel wagering. Parimutuel wagering is a component, but what I was trying to do is Georgia State did a study, and horse racing produced 5,000 jobs. And not only jobs at the track, but hay farmers, horse farms, breeding farms throughout the state of Georgia. So the money was going to be going to Hope Scholarship, the proceeds. And also, I would tell you this, the only reason I supported that is because there would be no state money involved, not to build a parking lot, no tax incentives. It would all be built with private development. And one of the things that we were going to get if we would have been able to pass horse racing, we were guaranteed a Breeders' Cup every 4 years. The economic impact of a Breeders' Cup is $60 million every time it comes every 4 years. To put that in perspective, the SEC Championship is about $42 million. So the Breeders' Cup is the Super Bowl of horse racing. It was all going to be done with private investment, and it was going to be done very similar to what the Braves are doing with restaurants, retail. It was going to be a destination point. And let me just say this. Florida, it gets too hot to continue to race, but it's too cold to go to Kentucky or New York. We have the perfect climate, and what I was really trying to do was create an ecosystem of the equestrian industry. Parimutuel wagering was a component, but I was trying to bring the horse and equestrian business to the state of Georgia.
Same question.
So it's a great example for the folks at home to think about the value that the Chamber of Commerce brings to our community. They do wonderful work, but it's also a good example where conflicts of interest are paramount when our legislator is also the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. This is an industry that doesn't generate money. It isn't a profitable industry as a business person. It isn't something that citizens in our district want. We pulled on this issue before we ran, and it was 70% of votes by the folks in Cherokee County. And it was the same kind of dollars first, morality second mentality that led to the governor's veto of the religious freedom bills. At some point, we have to say the almighty dollar is not a priority. In this case, I would dispute that the almighty dollar will actually be made in this venture, and it will stay in Georgia. And I definitely dispute from the morality side that gambling is doing anything to contribute to the welfare of society. We promised the state when we passed the Georgia lotteries and the Hope Scholarship that we wouldn't do this. We had a huge debate about this. It was all over the state. This was very clearly rejected by the voters, and yet each session it seems to be brought up once again. So I would be opposed to it on both counts, both for morality and economic reasons.
Eric, I happened to hear one of your radio commercials today. You alluded to it bit a moment ago in your opening statement that your opponent was sent to office as a conservative but is voting like a liberal. Would you expound on that a little bit? Exactly what do you mean specifically by that?
Sure. There are two parties in this country that dominate politics. One of them that isn't this party, the Democrat Party, is the one that taxes you $1 and gives you 10 cents of services back and expects you to be grateful for it. That's exactly what I mean. Whenever government gets involved, we lose. It costs money to administer programs from the state, federal, municipal level. It's impossible to generate a return on investment in most cases, and so that's why the private sector is such a wonderful mechanism for getting done what we need to get done in society. What's more, think about the opportunity we have with this gas tax. This $1 billion gas tax last year, we had a surplus. At the very least, we should have used the surplus to pay for the projects. We didn't need to tax ourselves. But the legislature took the easy way out, and my opponent took the easy way out, was the deciding vote. The other two senators for Cherokee County voted no. Bruce Thompson, John Albers, they voted no on this bill. Senator Beach voted yes, and it passed and it went through. It was unnecessary. In business, we reprioritize our current spending. We'll take the $23 billion that the state already spends, and we would reprioritize, we would gain efficiencies. The budget's been going up $1 billion every year. It's not because the state needed it, it's because they happened to collect it and they chose to spend it. To me, that's a definition of growth.
Well, the examples that were used in that radio ad included the gas tax, MARTA, and T-Splost. Can you respond to those?
Well, first off, on T-Splost, I did not vote for T-Splost. I was not in office at the time. Chip Rogers voted for that, sponsored the bill, voted for the bill, and sat on the committee to pick the projects. So I did not vote for T-Splost like my opponent's saying, because I wasn't even in office. Now, on the transportation bill, I was not the deciding vote. It passed 42 to 17. 29 is what you need. So I was not the deciding vote. I was not the number 29th vote. I did vote for it. I will tell you that we are too dependent, or we're too dependent on our federal program and on federal dollars. And every time you use a federal dollar for transportation, you have to go through 22 different steps. Actually, by passing this bill and having $1 billion of state revenue, we're actually going to save 30%. And a great example of that is Highway 20. That was going to be a project that was going to be built with federal dollars. And when you use the federal dollars, they were making us look at a northern section, a southern route, and we were going to have to study all those three routes and the current route. You're going to have to do environmental studies on all three routes. And we were able, as your senator, I was able to convince GDOT, the commissioner, to move that from federal funding to state funding. Now that project's going to go from $80 million to $59 million, so it's going to save us a bunch of money, number one. But number two, it's going to expedite that project 4 years ahead of schedule because of the regulation when you use a federal dollar. Anytime we can get Washington out of the way, and I was just tired of kicking the can down the bucket. You got to remember, when we passed House Bill 170, Congress was not funding the Highway Trust Fund. It was insolvent. And they were doing what they call continuing resolutions every 3 to 6 months. They were kicking the can down the road. They did 42 continuing resolutions. We couldn't plan as a state on 3 to 6 month increments on large projects that take 2 to 3 to 4 years to build. So I said, we need to take matters into our own hand, and I'm not going to apologize for getting Washington out of our business. Thank you.
So that would be wonderful if it were true. It would be fantastic if it were true, but it just isn't. During the 2012 election, Brandon Beach put on more fundraisers, events for the T-Splost than running his own campaign. That was according to local media. I'm just quoting them. They did the investigative reporting. They did the investigation to determine that and come up with that opinion. He was the cheerleader for this. And there are numerous quotes on our website and the mailers that you'll be receiving backing that up. This was his baby. It died in Cherokees. Over 80% of us killed it. So trying to brag about speeding something up is irrelevant. He was the cheerleader and the champion for the single most hated bill the Cherokees voted on for quite some time. Further, those spending bills, again, he didn't address that he raised tax, did he? He just talked about the projects. I don't object to the projects that $1 billion gas tax funded. I object to the funding. We didn't need to raise the tax. We could have used the state surplus. And he didn't address any of that. All he addresses is, I'm getting stuff done, I'm getting stuff done. He doesn't address how he does it. Again, the Democrats are awesome at this. They will give you everything for a price, and you'll get some things back. But the margin is what they keep, and that's always what happens in the state legislature. We've got to change that mentality. We've got to make do with what we have, get the priority projects done that are important to the state, and stop bragging about getting stuff done faster by spending more money to do it.
Mike, can I respond? We also put $700 million in the amended budget towards transportation, on top of the $1 billion. Now, let me tell you, the IT3 study that Governor Perdue did from 2010 to 2030 says we are $61 billion behind. And there's not anybody sitting in this room that doesn't agree we have a traffic problem. We have congestion. And we're $61 billion behind just to keep status quo. That would be $3 billion a year. Now we're spending $1.7 billion, and we're going to expedite these projects as fast as we can to make your quality of life better. And so that's where I just wanted to clarify that we did take $700 million of that $1 billion surplus we had and put it into transportation on top of the $1 billion, because we need to fix our roads.
I'm going to shift to job growth. Job creation is always an important issue. What do you believe are some things that can be done in the state to promote job growth and ensure that Georgia remains an attractive place to start a business?
So the first thing I would do is licensing requirements. I've been working with the Heritage Foundation, who are friends of mine, 2 Minutes organization. They helped me on the religious freedom bills, and they've been helping me on this as well. 30% of the jobs you apply for in this Obama economy require a permit, government permission of some kind. That's ludicrous. It's grown exponentially over the years. There's no legitimate reason for it other than restraint of trade and to reduce competition and to make it harder for you to start a business. Cosmetology, barber shops, nail salons, none of these things require safety permits, and they never used to until most recently. So that's the easiest thing we can do at the state level. It's fast, it's cheap, there isn't any reason why we shouldn't be doing it. And anything that we can do to reduce regulation. You know, I have a business in Hong Kong. It takes 1 hour to launch a business. It takes days to do this in other parts of the country. We can get better at this. We can make it easier, cleaner, quicker, faster for you to get your new ideas up and running and you to get out there running and driving for the American dream of your own.
I think the main thing is to reduce taxes and regulation. I think a classic example, that's the film industry. 10 years ago, we weren't in the film industry. We have a great tax credit for the film industry, and we have produced a lot of movies here. But not only that, we have less regulation. We have a turnkey program through the State Department of Economic Development for people to come in here. It's a one-stop shop to get the movie produced. And what's really happened now, since we've gotten into the movie industry, the film industry has put roots down. They're investing. So it used to be they came and filmed the movie and then they went and did the post-production back to California. Today now they're staying here. They're putting roots down. They're building production facilities, Pinewood Studios, Tyler Perry's taking Fort McPherson and going to redo that, put a big studio out there. So they're permanent jobs. I call it cradle to grave. We're starting the movie here, we're editing it, we're producing it, and we're getting it to production and to the movie stream, all right here in the state of Georgia. Another industry I would tell you that we are very successful to have, every time you process your credit card, we process 70% of the credit cards in the United States are processed through the state of Georgia. It's called the fintech business, and we need to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of what I call 21st century infrastructure, whether that's the right fiber, the right small cells, the right sensors, whatever. It's way above my head, but I got to tell you, we have got to make sure we're on the cutting edge of technology so that we can have the infrastructure in place, besides roads and bridges, but what I call 21st century infrastructure, to make sure that these companies want to come here, want to stay here, and can be successful and competitive in a world market.
So of interest there are those tax credits, right? Hand-picked, hand-selected winners and losers by the government. A couple of things come to mind when we talk about tax credits for Hollywood. I remember the governor's rationale for vetoing the religious freedom bill was Hollywood, and I almost choked that he could mention God and Hollywood in the same sentence. That just seemed laughable. Why did that become a priority all of a sudden? I'm glad that it brings some jobs, but why is that such a priority? What I'd rather see from an economic perspective is a fair regional approach that attracts all new businesses. It doesn't pick winners and losers. It doesn't cause us to compromise our values when it comes to religious belief in the name of the almighty dollar. So, for instance, we have states who neighbor us who don't have income taxes. Can we reform the system to replace the income tax with a consumption tax? What are we doing to level the playing field for everyone and not pick winners and losers? So I do have a concern when we incentivize specific industries, specific groups of folks. I come from fintech. Those same organizations that we're talking about, yeah, those tax credits are really attractive, and that really is what moves it. Some people will call that corporate welfare and bribery and whatever you want to call it. I'd rather create a playing field where Georgia is universally the attractive place for people to live and to work and to play, and not pick winners and losers.
We don't give a tax credit to the fintech industry. We do to the movie industry, but not fintech. I was just talking about the infrastructure being in place to have these.
Yeah, I was objecting to the Hollywood
Okay.
tax credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next question. As you mentioned, the religious liberty bill has been vetoed or is planned to be vetoed by the governor. What are your thoughts on his veto? Do you think it should be revisited in the next session? And what about the number of businesses that are threatening to leave the state if it is enacted? Does that concern you? Brad, you can-
Well, I can tell you right now, Hollywood would not have left, or the film industry would not have left Georgia, because they like to make money, and we have an atmosphere here for non-union workers, and they like filming movies here, and they can make money, so they wouldn't have left. And I don't think the Super Bowl would not have come, because every time someone builds a new stadium, they get a Super Bowl, and the two states that are vying for it already have religious freedom, Louisiana and Florida. So I don't buy into that either. I was disappointed in the governor's veto. I was a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 129, Josh McCoon's religious freedom bill. I voted for it. I supported it. I think what will happen now is I think what we have to do is be less adversarial between Josh McCoon and the religious folks in the business community. And we need to sit around the table and come together and try to come up with some solutions that everybody feels like they win. And I think we can come up with solutions where it can be a win-win for everybody. So I think that's what we'll do next session, is come back, revisit it, and look at it from that standpoint. But I was for it. I think, Christians are under attack right now, and I think, we need to protect everybody's religious freedoms.
So that's really how I got involved in this race. As a private citizen who retired from the private sector, I was asked by some folks in the Senate to run a study to refute the Chamber of Commerce's hit piece on the religious freedom bills. Some of you may remember they put out a piece saying how much this was going to cost the economy. We wanted to know what was in it. So we dug into it, we looked at the data, and there wasn't any. They'd made it up. They'd gone out for drinks one night, or had dinner together, and decided what it was worth. We can produce no data, no evidence, no proof. In contrast with the Heritage Foundation, the National Conservative think tank, I worked with them. I worked with Senate researchers. We looked for 1,000 Fortune 1000 companies in this country. We looked for wherever they had moved an office, opened a new headquarters, whenever they made a big change in convention business. And guess what? The 32 states in the country that already have religious freedom on the books, guess how many companies fled the tyranny of religious liberty for the freedom of no religious liberty? Big old donut. None. And the same companies who pretend to care about this, Apple, do business in Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Malaysia, Russia, places where they put gays in jail, and they don't have religious liberty. So this isn't really about 30 pieces of silver. It's not about not standing with God. It's about pride, cocktail parties, ego, PR, and liberal companies that are out of control, that are controlling the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce has scared our governor into believing something that just isn't factually true. The evidence doesn't support it. Morality doesn't support it. And it's a sad state of our state that we're even having to have this sort of debate. So I'll continue to lead the fight against the Chamber of Commerce's attacks on religious freedom. Even when politicians are given cover to vote in favor of something, when their organization is attacking that same religious freedom, I'm going to stand up. I don't have those same lobbyist connections. I don't have that same employer conflict. I'm not going to be held back in voting my conscience and in following out the public discourse and calling out the enemies of religious freedom.
Can I respond? I can tell you, I'm president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and I can prove I don't have a conflict of interest. I voted for religious freedom, and I voted for campus carry, two issues the Metro Chamber and the Georgia Chamber were against. My chamber wasn't against it. My chamber is made up of 85% small business, hardworking people like sitting out here in this audience. And I'm not going to be embarrassed to represent small business that's the backbone of our country.
Just a question would be, when you go to the public policy page, she said yes, I'll make it real short. When you go to the North Fulton County Chamber of Commerce and you look at their legislative action, and you see that they're tied together with all the other chambers of commerce, including the state Chamber of Commerce, and it's those chambers that are putting these hit pieces on religious freedom. They say they're tied together, they say they're working together, they say these are their public policy priorities. It's hard to divorce yourself of that. When you're the CEO, and I know this coming from the private sector, it's always your fault. And when your organization is the attack dog on this issue, it's up to you to call them off, and that's it.
My next question has to do with legislative seniority. Brandon, you were the incumbent in this race. You were currently on the Economic Development and Tourism and Transportation committees. How does that seniority specifically help District 21? And if you were not to be elected, is that going to bring harm to this district?
Well, I mean, I do think it will. I'm chairman of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. I'm on Science and Technology. I'm on Regulated Industries. I'm Secretary of Transportation, and I'm on MARTOC and the Oversight Committee for the World Congress Center. I will tell you, the way things work down there is you've got to earn your stripes to be a chairman. You don't become a chairman as a freshman. I was fortunate I did, because I was vice chairman of Science and Technology, and Barry Loudermill ran for Congress, so I just moved right on up, and I became the chairman. I will tell you, if I'm fortunate enough to get reelected, the transportation chairmanship is vacant right now because Tommy Williams retired, and I will do everything I can to put my name in the hat for that position. And chairman of transportation is one of the big committees in the Senate. So I think, you know, if you want to have some clout, it does help to have some time down there, and that would be good for the district if I was chairman of transportation. It's great for the district that I'm chairman of economic development and tourism.
Here I would ask you the polar opposite. Are we going to lose anything from that perspective by electing you as our representative?
You will absolutely lose something. You will lose $17 billion in new spending that would have been generated by my opponent if he gets that chairmanship. $6 billion T-SPLOST, $8 billion MARTA, $1 billion gas tax. That's what he did when he wasn't the chairman. Oh my gosh, what's he going to do when he is the chairman? This is why I came out of the private sector and out of retirement to run. I didn't have to do this. I'm spending my own money to do it. This is expensive. I don't have any lobbyists funding me. I'm just upset about this because the damage that's been done in 3 years by somebody who isn't a chairman and now wants to go on to higher office, either to be a chairman within the legislature or be lieutenant governor one day. Oh my goodness, we've got to stop it. The county doesn't support these things, and now's the time to stop.
I'm going to move to education now. Teachers across the state are concerned that they're being asked to take on a lot of responsibility for not much pay, often having to come out of their own pockets for school supplies. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the state's public education system, and do you have any plans to better the lives of school teachers in the state by increasing education funding?
So here's a case where I love innovative business models, and there's a couple going on right now that I think we need to try to replicate throughout the state. Some of you are familiar with the organization Junior Achievement. I love these guys. I didn't even realize they were doing this, but Jack Harris, who's the CEO of Junior Achievement here in Atlanta, has a school within a school model going on at Banneker High School. Many of you know Banneker High School. It's down south. It's in a terrible, terrible school district. One of the worst areas performance-wise as far as our schools go. He is in concert with the district, with the principal, has hired his own teachers, has taken applicants as students, and has 150 students that they now teach with private sector teachers that aren't union teachers, that are people like you here in the audience who have real jobs and are coming in to teach these classes. The performance standards they've seen are off the charts of what the previous performance was relative to the new performance. Outside the statistics that you actually do. But this is a sort of model I'd love to see throughout the state, where we reinvent our schools from the inside out, where we change the rules of how curriculums are administered, which curriculums are selected, and the types of individuals who are selected to teach them. If you have the same structure, the same people, the same processes, very difficult to expect change. So we need a little bit of that to shake things up to improve all those elements at the same time.
Would you support that across the board?
So I don't see a problem with it. It's going to benefit the lowest income schools the most. Frankly, I don't know the Cherokee. It's going to be the harder hit school districts where that's going to be the biggest benefit you would expect. So I don't see a problem.
Well, we're blessed here in District 21. We have the highest SAT scores in the state. I'm the envy of every other senator down under the gold dome because of our district being, so well educated. And I will tell you that it goes back to local control and letting the administrators be administrators, the principals be principals, and the teachers teach. And we just recently passed a law this session, Senate Bill 364, to reduce testing and let the teachers teach. I think what education is all about now is dual enrollment with technical colleges or colleges. We've got to get these kids prepared for the workforce development. We recently did a study, and we have some jobs that can't be filled. Computer coders, other computer type jobs, high-tech jobs, and cybersecurity. We went to Fort Gordon, and the commanding general told us they had 8,200 jobs they couldn't fill because they just weren't qualified. And we've got to get these kids in computer classes and keep training these kids for workforce development. But I don't think we do it at the state level. I think Dr. D and now Dr. Hightower have done a great job. One of the things they've done a great job is succession planning for leadership positions and principals and assistant principals. School board's done a great job with that too. So I think we let the local school boards control things and work in concert with our technical colleges and our higher education to make sure we have a great educated workforce.
Okay. We're now going to go into the portion where the questions are being asked by the people here in our audience, and I'm going to request that you keep your comments be as succinct as you can, because you can see there's a bucket.
Okay.
Okay? Do you believe job creation, well, this one is for my friend. Start with you. Do you believe job creation is paramount? If so, what have you done and will you do to create jobs?
I mean, that's what I do for a living, is economic development. And I will tell you that I will continue to make sure we have the best schools and the best infrastructure in place. When a company comes here and looks at our area, the first question they ask is, tell us about your education and tell us about your workforce. Can you provide an educated workforce for our jobs we need? And I will continue to do that and continue to work with the Department of Economic Development to make sure we've got the best tax policy, the least amount of regulations to attract business to the state of Georgia. We're the #1 state in the country to do business. 3 years running, we are. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened because of the leadership of the legislature and Governor Deal in making sure we had tax policy in place that companies want to come here. And obviously, we have some assets here. We have the busiest airport in the world. We have great higher education with Georgia Tech and Emory, University of Georgia, Kennesaw State, Georgia State, you can go on and on. But I will tell you, what really makes us is that we have the workforce that's educated to fill these jobs when they come here. Mercedes-Benz, that was a key for them when they came here, was to make sure they had the workforce. Our superintendent actually went on the call with the governor, the superintendent of Fulton County Schools, and just blew him away about our school system. So that helped solidify Mercedes bringing 1,000 jobs to New Jersey. And they left New Jersey because of their tax policy was horrible. So, thank you.
So 2 items there. One, again, I go back to the comprehensive tax code reform. So we don't just cherry pick which industries we like and offer tax credits, but we lower the playing field for everybody. The second is infrastructure related. So again, think about these big transit bills that have been thrown around, $8 billion for MARTA. What if instead we put that money into East Cherokee, Hickory Flat Highway, half a dozen other one-lane roads where there's 1,000 homes going up today on East Cherokee, right, to south of the intersection with Hickory Flat Highway. That's the case. And so why are we spending money on things that aren't necessarily going to enable Cherokee to experience the kind of development that we want? So you'll hear that 70% of people in Cherokee commute out of the county. Is that what we want? Do we want to be able to create some parts of the county where people can work and play and live, and it's developed for white-collar business to move in, and for people who live near that area. It's maybe the ball-ground area we keep rural, right? But we should decide that as a county. So what I like to do is, together with the delegation that represents Cherokee County, as well as the county commissioners, is propose a series of comprehensive plans for our county to make, and to really get into and decide what does the future of this county look like, and are we zoning, are we incentivizing, are we building out the right sort of infrastructure and environment so that that can play out. Instead of making incremental decisions, right? Instead of incrementally improving a housing development or incrementally improving the road, let's do that holistically, and I would fight to do that so we all feel like we've had a voice in the type of development that interests us most.
Thank you. And we'll start with you on this question. I'm going to combine two of them. How long have you lived in the district, and where did you live before? And what have you done for Cherokee County?
Yes, ma'am. So I've lived out east the last 20 years, 12 years in Georgia, some time in Virginia, some time in Texas. But within the last 12 years in Georgia, our daughters are raised here. My daughter Heidi's there in the front row, is 10. My daughter Kate's 6, she's at home. 7-year-old, so they're born and raised here. They go to public school here. We love it. We do live on the Milton side of the border, and that's just because they wouldn't let us move to Cherokee. There's a quota, there are too many people. We love it that they're right on the border with Cherokee. Chebrock is just on the other side of the border from us. And I think for Cherokee, what I've tried to do is really applies to multiple counties. So it's two things. Again, this religious liberty law. Again, I brought in the Heritage Foundation. We fought hard at the legislative level for religious freedom against Chamber of Commerce. It was just viciously lying about the impact of this bill. Second, what I haven't had a chance to mention, but we are working on, is welfare to work reform. Entitlements are out of control. We spend $3 billion in the state alone on Medicaid. That doesn't need to be the case. There are specific not-for-profits that I work with actively who are excellent at taking disadvantaged families, youth, young adults, bringing them in-house, giving them the proper training, mentoring, counseling, and over the course of the year, transforming them into, if not middle-class, near-middle-class jobs where they're making $37,000 a year, they can support themselves, they can get their own place. We need to be partnering more aggressively as a state, and I have been working on this already, no question, to redirect folks who are currently living off welfare and incentivize employers to participate in these accredited not-for-profit programs who can transform the lives of these families. It's my firm belief that you do well in life, you have a job, you can provide for yourself, and you go to church. If you do those two things, you're probably going to turn out okay. Now, the state has the most to do on the first one, and that's where we can really be creative as conservatives and show that we have the answer to poverty and to getting people to be self-reliant and self-sufficient that the liberals just have not been able to do.
Thank you, Brandon. You want me to read it again?
Oh, yes.
How long have you lived in the district, and where did you live before? What have you done for Cherokee County?
Well, 24 years I've lived in the district. Moved here from New Orleans, as I said in my opening comments. Best decision we ever made was to move here, raise our kids. Our kids, both my son's graduating May 7th from North Georgia, and I want him off my payroll just like my daughter's off my payroll. But we love it here, and I think I've done a lot for Cherokee County. When you look at, when I served Cherokee County 11 years, 7 years as your DOT board member, and now 4 years as your state senator. And I will tell you that 3 projects I'll tell you about quickly, and I was going to mention them in my closing statements also, so you're going to hear them twice. But the $25 million interchange at Rope Mill Road and I-575 for the new outlet mall, that was one of the first projects I was involved in when I became your DOT board member, and that's been an economic boom, but also quality of life and congestion relief. The second one was I was able to secure $9 million for the bridge and the road to connect 20 and 140, and now Northside Hospital is spending over $400 million on a new hospital that will create 1,000 jobs. And then, as I said earlier, as your state senator, I was able to convince Commissioner McMurray, the DOT commissioner, to move funding from Highway 20 to federal funding to state funding, saving you right at $20 million and expediting that project 4 years ahead of schedule. So I think I've got a proven track record of getting things done and being bold and being innovative. On the MARTA issue, I would like to say MARTA does not affect Cherokee County. Cherokee County is not in the MARTA Act. There's only 3 counties, Fulton, DeKalb, Clayton, and the city of Atlanta in the MARTA Act. So MARTA cannot come here to Cherokee County, folks. So just, if you read that, don't be scared about that. It can't, and I wouldn't have the power to do it anyway. MARTA would have to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the county commission, then it would have to go to the voters for a vote. So MARTA is not coming to Cherokee County, and the $8 billion number he's using is not correct. It was $2.2 billion for North Fulton.
That's not accurate. I can be able to respond to that. All that data is wrong. His SB 330 bill was an $8 billion bill. He was referring to Jan Jones' bill, who's my House member, who came in to rescue him at the last minute, because his Senate bill was killed by other senators who were concerned about what it would do for the district. What's more, the $8 billion does impact Cherokee. $4 billion of it was from federal funding. My opponent was famously quoted some years ago of saying, "Don't worry, that money is free, it's federal funding."
I like to say that quote because I've never said that.
Well, it's going to be on our website, so you can take a look at it. It's going to be in mailers too. It's good. $4 billion, folks. You can read it in print right now. You can Google it on your phone. It's coming from the federal government. That hits everybody in Cherokee. And then what's more, I read contracts all the time. There was nothing preventing them to change the project list of where they built. No restrictions.
Okay, let's see, who's first this time? You guys help me out here.
I think I'll be
This
first.
is so interesting. Are you first? You're
I am.
first now?
I'll be first.
All right, here we go. Comments are so good, it's hard to keep track. What is the solution for the 60% increase in truck traffic when the Port of Savannah is complete?
You know what? If you think there's a lot of 18-wheelers on 285 and on our interstates now, wait till the port is dredged. I think it's a twofold solution. One of the things we're doing, and GDOT's working on, is a freight plan on trains. We're trying to get more and more freight through rail to get it off the roads. And then we're also looking at a route that would go around the city. The problem is you have a lot of the logistics centers that are right there in South Fulton, and they need to get into Atlanta to unload their products. So we have to work on, we're looking at truck-only lanes. We're looking at several different options because we know it's coming. That's a good thing. Just like Hartsfield-Jackson's the busiest airport, Port of Savannah is one of the busiest ports in the United States, and it's the only one that's growing, and it's the only port that exports more than imports. So once we start taking those big container ships, our loads are going to triple in volume. So what we are doing, again, rail and looking at different truck lanes and truck traffic and truck patterns to get the freight out of Savannah. But it's a good problem to have, to have all that, because the Savannah Port is an economic engine for the state.
So I spent this morning with the Georgia Public Policy Institute on this very issue. I love transportation, I love infrastructure topics, I love planning topics. There are a lot of wonderful things we can do to bypass the immediate metro Atlanta area with freight traffic that frankly isn't trying to get to Atlanta. Quite a lot of it, we all know, is headed to other destinations, and they don't necessarily want to go through Atlanta either. It's really in nobody's interests, at least as far as both citizens and truckers go. And so bypassing through Macon and Columbus, those plans are in the works. I like the expansion plans that will connect the east-west route to circumvent their need to come up through Atlanta, leverage state roads and build those out on the north-south corridor. I will refer to my notes just to make sure I get the highway correct. But between expanding Highway 27 on the north-south corridor, as well as what they're calling the fall line highway that would go along where the topography drops off between the hills into the flatland. I love that concept. Obviously, we need to see the numbers and make sure that the cost benefit is worth it. But it seems very exciting to potentially move the rest of that trend.
Okay. So with you, how would you pay for all the unsafe bridges without fixing how we pay for transportation?
Okay, so that'll be
How would you pay for all the unsafe bridges without fixing how we pay for transportation?
I think I'll have to tweak that question to make it answerable. But we'll start with the priorities of what needs to be fixed and what actually matters. We need to start with the needs based on, the traffic that's coming across them, the amount of both commercial and residential commuter traffic that's coming across them, and prioritize where we're spending our time and our resources. The funding model can be funded within the current state budget. Like I mentioned before, we've been spending $1 billion more a year each and every year. That's the size of some state budgets, and we add it like it's nothing. And we don't repurpose it, we don't reprioritize, we don't do what businesses do every day, households do every day, which is to stop doing some things and start doing some others. We have a lot of slack in our budget if we were willing to do that. Part of the challenge is politicians will claim that, that benefit of, hey, we have a balanced budget. But what they won't tell you is the way they're doing it is by raising tax. So they've been doing that for so long, we can frankly repurpose quite a lot of that for the near term to solve that problem.
Okay, thank you. Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, we have 4,200 bridges that are failing, deficient, grade F. I went over a bridge tonight coming over here, Arnold Mill Road Bridge, 1952. It's stamped on the side of the bridge. That's getting old. And we've got some bridges that are deficient. And we have to get those fixed before an accident happens with, a school bus going over one of those bridges and it collapsed like happened in Minnesota. I don't want that to happen on my watch. So that's one of the reasons we are investing in bridges. Through House Bill 170, we've made bridges a priority. And we are fixing them throughout the state. And I think that's how you pay for it, was through that House Bill 170.
Okay, Brandon, we're going to start with you this time. What's your position on the restriction of craft boundaries on selling direct to consumers? Georgia is currently one of only 2 states with
Craft what?
Breweries.
Oh, that is not spelled correct. Okay. What's your, oh, what a name. What's your position on the restriction of craft breweries on selling direct to consumers? Georgia is currently one of only 2 states with this restriction.
We shouldn't restrict them at all. They should be able to sell their product. Craft breweries have become very, very popular. And, we have a 3-tier system here that's fighting that. We should not allow that. We should allow them to do what they want to do and sell it. If they want to sell a 6-pack, a 12-pack, I don't care what they want to sell. If they brew it there, they should be able to sell it on site. So I'm all for that. I don't want to ever punish innovation. And I'll give you an example. Uber came here. The taxi industry fought Uber. Well, just because someone came up with a great idea, we shouldn't protect the taxi cabs that are, working in the 1960s and haven't been innovative. So it's the same thing with the beer companies. If we have some innovative new breweries and new technologies, we should let them, sell their product. I love going to the breweries, by the way. I'm from New Orleans, so I love going to the craft breweries.
Thank you, Aaron.
So this would be a similar comment to the others we've made. While it's great to target one particular industry to unwind lobbyist entries that have restrained trade and reduced competition, we really need to do it everywhere. It didn't need to be just here. So I'm definitely in favor of it here. There's no reason to restrain trade, just to protect the distributors and force a very Byzantine system of passing costs back and forth. But we need to look at all industries within Georgia. That's what opens up jobs. That's what creates economic activity. The more government can get out of the way of small business, the better.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Aaron this time. Explain your, well, this is to Brandon, but I think probably for both of you would be good. Explain your medical malpractice bill. I'm going to jump to Brandon.
Yeah, that's my bill. And I got to tell you, the trial lawyers have fought me and fought me and fought me. What we were trying to do is go from a court system where you get to go to court, and we were going to go to an administrative panel. And what it would have done is right now, 82% of doctors in the state of Georgia admit to practicing defensive medicine to the cost of $14 billion annually. It cost you and me $14 billion annually for tests that are unneeded, and unwanted and really harmful to the patient. But the doctors have these tests because they want to cover themselves from litigation. They are scared to get sued. And they look at a patient as the lottery coming in. So they want to make sure they run every test they could possibly run. And consequently, $14 billion, if we could cut that out of the system, my United Healthcare would go down. So I'm all for cutting healthcare costs. And the fact of the matter is, less than 1% of any lawsuit on medical malpractice goes to trial. So all this about you need to have a trial by jury, it's all settled out of court, and the patient really is the one that suffers. The lawyers are the ones that make all the money. And so what I was trying to do there is go to an administrative panel and have set standards for judgment. So let's say, for example, if you went in for a right knee replacement and they did a left knee, there would be a set amount you would get for that mistake. And you'd get it within 6 weeks to 2 months. Some of these lawsuits take 7 years, and then the plaintiff doesn't get anything. So it goes to the lawyers. So that's what I was trying to do, and it was something that would help us combat Obamacare and rising healthcare costs. Because I can tell you, I have 22 employees. I can't take another 17 to 22% increase every year on top of each other. It's just got to stop.
Thank you.
The challenge is this particular legislation is a form of crony politics. The only supporter for this particular bill is an organization called Janssen Healthcare. It has funded $100,000 in political contributions to my opponent and several other politicians, which has this as a priority. This bill benefits nobody except them. Think of patients' problem today. 10,000 people die in hospitals each year because of one of two problems: being given the wrong medication and being given the correct medication in a fatal dose. That's Harvard Business School, you did at Harvard Medical School. Okay, don't you want the right as an individual to figure out what fair compensation is for that? Isn't that up to you? Why should a government panel decide that? What's more, I have good friends on Capitol Hill. One of them's father used to be the Solicitor General under Ronald Reagan. He used to argue before the Supreme Court all the time. The 7th Amendment to the Constitution guarantees our right to a civil jury trial. It's one of the least disputed amendments to the Constitution because that's all it says. It's not complicated at all. It just says you have that right. So to try to replace that right with a government panel and try to intervene in people's very personal decisions, I think disintermediates and disenfranchises citizens, doctors, hospitals. I don't care about the trial lawyers. This is about fundamental human rights enshrined in the Constitution. You can't do it. And that's why so much of Obamacare really is unconstitutional. Our Supreme Court justices let some of it slide.
Okay, this question, Aaron, is for you. Would you support a bill that allows medical doctors to prescribe cannabis oil to any patient and for any condition the doctor deems necessary to improve the health of the patient?
So I'm really sensitive to this cannabis oil topic. I have very close friends as well as family members who suffer from lupus, fibromyalgia, seizures, terrible medical conditions. And every moment you spend, I spend with them. You want to help them. You want to lay your hands on their head and have them be healed. But it's terrible. Now, at the same time, the American Medical Association has said that the research is still out. But they want more clinical studies, more research, more definitive scientific studies to be done to back up what these substances can and should be used for before advocating for such a major policy shift, which frankly, if it were done on the state level, would still be illegal at the federal level because the federal law prohibits it. I spent my teenage years as the teenage spokesman for a youth drug prevention organization. So this is a subject near and dear to my heart, but I want the science to back it up. I want to make sure before we create any sort of massive change in public policy that we have all the facts on the table to jump to a quick and easy response.
Thank you.
Yes, I would support that. I would support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brandon, I'll start with you this time. It's a long one.
Oh.
Pay attention. For the few years, the legislature has voted to increase the Georgia budget spending by a total of 14%. None of these votes have been unanimous since Georgia's population growth and inflation is less than 3% over the same time. and because average teacher salaries are already the highest in the Southeast, is increasing government spending beyond inflation, population, and salary competition something that you would consider voting against?
Now, that was a mouthful. I would just tell you this. I voted to decrease the income tax this year from 6% to 5.4%. I want to lower your taxes. So, now, we've got a $23.7 billion budget, and one of the things we did do, we put $1.2 billion in the rainy day fund, and I'm glad the governor did that because we need to save for, if we would ever have a recession. But I'm for giving the money back, and that's why I voted for the income tax decrease from 6% to 5.4%.
Thank you. Aaron?
So this is a great example of squeezing the balloon on one end and having it explode on the other. If you look at the governor's financial statistics, the spending of the state goes up $1 billion every year. So how is that possible? How are we have balanced budget limits, we can't go into debt. So how is it possible? The balloon must be expanding somewhere else if we're reducing taxes somewhere. So taxes are going up, and you voted for them. So folks who will claim that, hey, we did 17 little things to save money on taxes, to me sound very much like, I imagine the deck crew of the Titanic thought they were doing a great job straightening the deck chairs. They forgot about the icebergs. And it's the $8 billion in more to spend, $6 billion in T-Splosh, the $1 billion gas tax. It's the icebergs that matter in taxing and spending. So the little sleight of hand of this goes down a little bit, this goes up a lot, we still have to pay for it. We get stuck with the bill. So again, that's why I'm the only one in this campaign that has signed the pledge to not increase tax, because I think we've done enough of that over the years, and we have plenty of headroom to repurpose the existing spending to take care of our priorities. We never put ourselves on a diet. The zero-based balanced budgeting thing, it's not cutting it because they're spending $1 billion more every year. We don't get to do that in our household. 16% increase, whatever the number was. We don't get to do that at home and in our businesses. Why should the government do it? We have to pay for it.
Okay, this is one, I'll start with you, Aaron. I'm going to put two parts together here. Number one, do you support driver's license for illegal aliens? And number two, will you sponsor legislation to ensure the driver's license for illegal aliens are different than the driver's license for legal foreigners? In other words, Senate Bill 6. Yes.
So I was shocked to read in the news just the other day that 20 people die a day in this country from an illegal alien with a valid state driver's license who kills somebody else in an accident and then they're whisked away by INS. There was a chance to stop this in Georgia this year. And you know who put the pressure on our state legislators to not do it? The Chamber of Commerce. Why? They like illegal immigration. It's a great deal. They don't have to pay them as much. So they get away with cheap labor costs, and meanwhile they kill this bill that's both a safety issue. And if anybody doubts that, please Google the Billy Inman and Dustin Inman Foundation, and you will read wonderful stories of real Americans who have been impacted very tragically by this horrific loophole in our bill. So why we are not jumping to the rescue of people who are dying every day, while at the same time closing the loophole for employment for illegal aliens is beyond me. It's a dollars first, principle last approach. And the Chamber of Commerce has gotten way in over the head on this. And I'll note that our senator did not stand up when there was a request in the Senate for a recorded vote on this topic. He was not one of the 5 senators needed in order to get a recorded vote on this topic. It was shut down very, very quickly. You can read more about that through that Inman Foundation as well.
Thank you.
I mean, I voted for SB 6. It passed the Senate. It got stalled in the House. So I was all for that bill. I raised my hand and voted for the amendment. I was voted both on the amendment and the bill. So, and I would support that bill.
Yeah, point of clarification then, because that's a misstatement.
It is a mistake.
It's
I did raise
a
my hand.
misstatement because D.A. King was there and he witnessed it. There was a motion by Josh McCoon to get a recorded vote on the amendment to this bill.
DA
You were
was
not
sitting
one
right
of the
ahead of me.
four folks. You were not one of the people that raised the hand that did not go up. Josh McCoon and other members can verify that you're speaking of a different vote. This is legislative sleight of hand. Does anybody remember John Kerry? I voted for it before I voted against it.
Okay, that's what
this is.
That's uncalled for, that's not true. I voted for it, and I voted for the bill that's supported. It's in Senate Bill, go to the website and look at Senate Bill 6.
Brandon and Aaron,
And
I
I'll
have
vote.
the last question for you, but Aaron, I need for you to address that. We should, in your closing, okay?
And it should, and please say that that's what the question said when you address it. What solutions do you have for funding the over 4,000 road and bridge projects in the state of Georgia?
We just asked that. We just asked that.
Who read it? Closing. Our people read it. Haven't they done a great job, you guys? You're really nice.
Are we closing?
We are closing. You're ready.
Okay,
Your
I'm
number
first.
one.
All right. On May 24th, you will hire one of us to be your next state senator. I believe the choice is very clear. We have one person that moved here 8 months ago from Chicago, and he's not vested in this community because he moved here 8 months from Chicago. On the other hand, you have someone that has a proven track record of conservative votes. In 4 years in the Senate, I have voted for 14 tax cuts. I sponsored legislation to change the gas tax to a flat tax. I was the only senator to introduce bold legislation to undermine Obamacare and save you, the taxpayers, $14 billion. I've always voted pro-life. I have an A rating with the NRA, and I have always voted to protect your Second Amendment. And I co-sponsored and voted for SB 129 to defend and protect your religious liberties. In 11 years serving here in Cherokee, 7 years on DOT, 4 in the Senate, I led the effort for the interchange at 575 in Rope Mill, $25 million interchange, to help you with congestion relief and to create jobs for the Outlet Mall. I secured $9 million for the bridge and road improvements between Highway 140 and Highway 20, where Northside Hospital will invest $400 million and create 1,000 jobs, minimum. And I want to tell you, that's a great example of all of us coming together. Chairman Ahrens, the mayor, Northside Hospital, GDOT, and we came to a solution because that project was stuck in the mud. And finally, as your state senator, we were able to get GDOT to move the Highway 20 widening project, which I spoke earlier of, from federal funding to state funding, saving you $20 million and expediting that project 4 years ahead of schedule to make your quality of life better. Finally, my opponent in some of his literature says we need to take District 21 back. Folks, we have not lost the district. District 21 is the envy of the 55 other senators at the Gold Dome. We have the lowest unemployment, the highest SAT scores, great quality of health care, great public safety, and great amenities and a great community and sense of community. That doesn't happen by accident. It takes leadership and involvement of the citizens to make that happen. I would ask for your support on May 24th, and I will continue to make District 21 number one. Thank you very much.
So the most wonderful thing that you've heard today is the Bernie Sanders candidate. You can have everything, and I will give it to you, if you'll just give me a little something in return. That's what the Democrat Party does. They tax you $1, they give you 10 cents back. Everything that my opponent brags about, look, I'm not a politician. I'm coming out of the private sector because I'm just concerned about this. Everything he brags about is spending our money. When does that make sense? It's not that the projects are bad, it's how we're funding them. Now, some of the projects are bad. $8 million MARTA project makes no sense on the moon, but the rest of them may not be so bad. But by spending billions and billions and billions of money, that's our money, that's the easiest thing in the world for a politician to do. This is why people are so mad in presidential politics. Why do you think Trump and Cruz are doing so well? Because this is the establishment, business as usual politics. So here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's free college, free tuition, free this, free that. Nothing is free. This is the Republican Party, folks, not the Democrat Party. We have got to stand for something, or we will fall for anything. When you add up the bills that have been proposed by this state senator, the $8 billion for MARTA, the $6 billion for T-Spots, and the $1 billion at gas tax, taxing is the first button that he resorts to. That's not what I do in the private sector. I resort to innovation, reprioritizing, to spending what we've already got, and returning surpluses when they have them. Now, it's not difficult to see why conflicts of interest like this might come up. As my opponent mentioned, he is the CEO of the Norfolk Chamber of Commerce. At the federal level, you couldn't be the head of an organization that lobbies the legislature and be a congressman or a senator. But for some reason, Georgia's allowed that to happen. And this is what infuriates regular people. Why would I be running for this office? This is going to cost me money, it's painful, it's tiring, I don't get to spend time with my kids. It's because this is infuriating politics as usual. It's spending our money, it's crony capitalism, it's lobbyists entrenched in the legislature. These issues that he's been campaigning on are universally despised in this district. And it is time Cherokee was represented by a true conservative that votes like a conservative and doesn't vote like a Democrat. Thank you very much.